He had walked past thousands of people in his lifetime, shaking hands, giving speeches, making promises. But this time, Bill Clinton stopped. On a freezing sidewalk in downtown Cincinnati, a homeless man asked him for $1. Instead of handing over a coin, Clinton sat beside him. "Tell me your story," he said. What happened next would change both of their lives, and countless others forever. The wind sliced through downtown Cincinnati with bitter cruelty. People hurried past the corners with their collars up, eyes down. Most ignored the weathered man hunched beneath a blanket near the edge of the bus stop. His name was Mac Miller, and after 8 years on the street, he had become invisible. Mac's cardboard sign was soggy from last night's sleet. It read, "Veteran. Cold. Hungry. Please help. God bless." He wasn't actually a veteran, but it seemed to increase the odds of someone dropping a coin in his paper cup. The streets moved around him like he wasn't there. When a little boy pointed, his mother tugged him away with a sharp, whispered, "Don't stare." Mac sighed and pulled the blanket tighter. Then he saw the man in the long coat, clean-shaven, distinguished, unmistakably familiar. Former President Bill Clinton, walking briskly with a coffee in hand, stopped as Mac asked the question he'd muttered 1,000 times. "Can you spare $1?" Clinton paused. Mac braced for the usual, a quick head shake or awkward apology. But instead, Clinton put his coffee down, removed his gloves, and slowly sat beside Mac on the icy concrete. "My name's Bill," he said, holding out his hand. "Mind if I sit a while?" Mac blinked. No cameras, no crowd, no campaign. Just a man in a wool coat who seemed to mean it. "You're that Bill Clinton?" Mac asked, squinting. Clinton chuckled softly. "That's what they tell me. What's your name?" "Mac. Mac Miller." "Well, Mac," Clinton said, "I'd like to hear your story, if you're willing to share." Mac looked around, half expecting a prank. But something in Clinton's eyes, earnest, focused, made him nod. "All right, but I haven't got much to offer but a long, sad tale." "I've heard a few of those," Clinton said gently, "and I've found they often hide something powerful." As they walked toward a nearby diner, Mac felt the weight of stares from passers-by. A former president walking side by side with a homeless man? It looked surreal. But Clinton didn't flinch. When they reached the door, Clinton said, "You're with me." And they stepped inside. At the booth, Mac wrapped his fingers around the hot mug of coffee the waitress set down. He hadn't felt this kind of warmth in a long time. Clinton ordered a modest meal. Mac asked, "Can I get the big breakfast?" Clinton nodded without hesitation. As he devoured the eggs and bacon, Mac began to talk about his 26 years working the line at a manufacturing plant, about losing his job when it shut down, about his wife Rita's illness, their mounting bills, and the house they couldn't save, how he started living in his car, then eventually the streets. Clinton didn't interrupt. He just listened. "That's how it happens," Mac said. "You fall behind a little, then a little more, and suddenly you're nobody. Just another ghost on the street." Clinton leaned in. "You're not a ghost, Mac. I see you, and I think others should too." It was the first time in years Mac felt truly seen, and it was just the beginning of a journey neither man expected. Mac woke up confused. The bed was soft, the room warm, the sheets smelled clean. For a terrifying moment, he thought he'd broken into someone's home. Then he remembered Bill Clinton, the hotel, the room key. It had all really happened. The night before, Clinton had paid for a hotel room, not out of pity, but out of genuine concern. "Everyone deserves a good night's sleep," he had said, pressing the keycard into Mac's trembling hands. Mac had stood frozen at the elevator, holding that key like it was made of gold. Now, after the best night's sleep he'd had in years, Mac stood in front of the mirror. The man staring back at him looked like a stranger. Gray beard, sunken eyes, cracked hands. But under the layers of wear and hardship, he saw a flicker of someone he used to know. The bathroom had soap, shampoo, even a razor. Mac hesitated, then began shaving. He didn't stop until the man in the mirror started to resemble the Mac Miller from before the fall. Older, yes, but alive. When he met Clinton in the hotel lobby that morning, the former president smiled. "You clean up good, Mac." Mac grinned back. You buy me a shower and a razor, I might start thinking I'm human again. Over breakfast, Clinton asked questions, not just about Mac's past, but about the system, the shelters, the clinics, the red tape. What worked? What didn't? Mac answered honestly. It's not just about food and a bed. It's about being seen, heard, believed. You know how hard it is to keep going when the whole world treats you like a mistake. Clinton nodded slowly. I do. More than you know. The day passed quickly. Clinton asked Mac to show him the places the city didn't advertise, the alleys, the churches, the libraries that served as lifelines. They visited shelters where Mac introduced Clinton to friends, people with names, stories, dignity. At one shelter, Clinton sat on a folding chair beside a woman named Tara, who had fled abuse and now fixed plumbing in exchange for a bed. He spoke to a veteran named Bert who had PTSD and felt discarded by the country he served. He didn't speak like a politician. He listened like a person. Later that evening, Mac asked a question that had been gnawing at him. Why are you doing this? You could be anywhere in the world. Why Cincinnati? Why me? Clinton looked him in the eye. Because once, a long time ago, someone listened to me when I felt lost, and it changed everything. That night, Mac found another surprise waiting in his room. Clean clothes in his size, a bag of toiletries, even a note in Clinton's handwriting. You matter. Let's keep talking. For the first time in years, Mac felt something stir beneath the exhaustion and cynicism. Hope. Bill Clinton had always known the numbers. He'd read the reports, seen the graphs, and listened to the advisors talk about policy and public sentiment. But none of that compared to sitting across the table from Mac Miller, a man who had lived 8 years on the streets of Cincinnati, and seeing the truth in his eyes. That morning, Mac stepped out of the small studio apartment Clinton had arranged for him. His new clothes felt strange, too clean, too crisp, and the air smelled different when you weren't breathing it in from a concrete alley. Today was different. Today, he was no longer invisible. They met at City Hall. Clinton was already there, in a blue suit, his usual charismatic calm radiating across the room. The other people at the table, policy experts, city officials, nonprofit leaders, all glanced at Mac with curiosity, some skepticism. He didn't look like them. But he wasn't here to look like them. He was here to speak the truth. Mac is more than an advisor, Clinton said as he opened the meeting. He's a living archive of everything our system ignores. Mac stood slowly, clearing his throat. You want to know what it's like out there? He asked, his voice steady. I can tell you. It's hunger at 3 a.m., when no soup kitchen is open. It's hiding your boots when you sleep so no one steals them. It's knowing that even if you scream for help, nobody's listening. There was silence, not the awkward kind, but the kind that follows honesty when it hits too close. After the meeting, Clinton took Mac on a tour of an old municipal building on the West End. We're thinking of converting this into a pilot center, Clinton said. Mac ran his fingers over the cracked tiles and broken windows. It's got bones, he muttered. But we need more than just shelter. You build another warehouse for people to rot in. It's just a different kind of prison. Clinton nodded. So we build something better. That night, they met with a small group of local stakeholders in a modest community center. The air was thick with doubt and caution. People like Mac aren't projects, Clinton said. They're partners. And if we're going to fix this, we're going to listen to them. Mac shared the rough draft of his plan. Integrated services under one roof. Shelter, meals, job training, therapy, legal aid, and above all, dignity. People lose hope before they lose housing, Mac told the room. This center needs to give it back. Clinton listened intently. Every sentence Mac spoke added more fuel to the blueprint they were building. Later that week, Mac joined Clinton for site visits, shelters, alley encampments, food pantries. He took notes, interviewed residents, asked questions no bureaucrat ever thought to ask. By the end of the week, Clinton looked at Mac with something more than admiration. It was belief. You've got something, Clinton said. Not just a story, a vision. And we're going to build it together. As they stood outside the future site of the center, looking over the rusted gate and abandoned structure, Clinton asked, What do you want to call it? Mac didn't hesitate. The Second Chance Center. Clinton smiled. Perfect. And just like that, the plan had a name, and a voice that couldn't be ignored. A crisp spring morning enveloped the Second Chance Center, the converted warehouse in Cincinnati now suffused with renewed purpose. Bill Clinton stood beside Mac Miller at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, cameras flashing at their every move. "Welcome to a new beginning." Clinton's voice resonated. "Here, we're not just opening a building, we're restoring lives." Mac, standing beside him, nodded while the applause swelled, the enormity of the moment sinking in. Once inside, the tour revealed an inspiring transformation. The ground floor intake area bustled with activity, warm meals being served, private counseling booths glowing softly, and administrative desks where residents with paperwork challenges were being guided one-on-one. Ascending to the second floor, dorm-style private rooms each featured curtains, lockers, and crisp linens, offering dignity and a sense of belonging. The third floor opened into the job training hub, rows of computers, resume stations, interview prep rooms, and therapy spaces. The fourth floor was a sanctuary. Candles flickered beside yoga mats, art therapy tables showcased colorful canvases, and a massive mural proclaimed, "I matter." A hush fell as attendees absorbed its message. Stories poured out as Clinton and Mac invited residents to share at an informal gathering mid-morning. Tara, now employed at a local construction firm, spoke with pride. "You didn't just rebuild a building. You restored my dignity." Sergio, a Vietnam veteran, admitted tears. "They helped me heal, instead of turning me away because of PTSD." Jen, who'd relapsed once but found support instead of judgment, said, "I'm rebuilding my life and breaking my silence." By the end of week 1, though, the center was at capacity. More people were showing up than could be housed. A zoning battle emerged. Neighbors whispered fears about crime and falling property values. In response, Clinton and Mac held a town hall right there at the center. Clinton calmly addressed the crowd. "Fear is the easy response. Courage builds something that helps prevent tomorrow's fear." Mac added in earnest, "I lost my purpose when I lost my home. This building gave it back to me, and I want that for others." By the end of the night, local leaders had unanimously endorsed their expansion plans. The celebration was short-lived. As expansion began, staffing shortages, budget constraints, and construction delays piled up. One freezing January morning, Mac discovered burst pipes flooding the counseling offices. Instead of giving up, the staff, along with donations from compassionate neighbors, spent all day repairing leaks and drying floors. Overwhelmed, Mac broke down in the rubble. "How can we expect to fix all this?" he muttered. Clinton gently put a hand on his shoulder. "Fixing one life sometimes starts with fixing one leak. Together we grow." A few weeks later, a flu outbreak swept shelters across town. The Second Chance team quickly opened isolation rooms, organized vaccination drives, supplied hygiene kits, and case updates showed a 30% drop in flu-related ER visits. Word spread. State officials toured the center and promised federal grants to replicate the model statewide. On a brighter note, an invitation arrived. Mac was being honored at Clinton's Foundation Gala. He hesitated, but asked if his children could attend. Clinton beamed back. "Make that 4." Books closed no matter how battered. Rita, Tommy, Sarah, and baby Emma, all reunited, touring the halls, greeting residents, sharing laughter. Mac walked with his family under the mural. They paused before "I matter," and he choked up, remembering where he'd been. Months later, and exactly 5 months since the center's opening, the data spoke volumes. 300-plus residents helped. Nearly 70% found jobs or education. The North Side wing was breaking ground, and interest rippled from Columbus and Dayton. Federal policymakers praised the all-in-one model as homelessness reform. That evening, Mac and Clinton stood before the mural. Light from the setting sun splashed around them. Clinton smiled. "We didn't just open walls, we opened lifelines." Mac's response was measured, quiet, but sure. "And this is only the beginning." Across the room, volunteers were already drawing up family unit plans. Local contractors were signing on, and residents were painting new murals for the next expansion. Episode 4 closes on that scene. Two men talking quietly beside a mural, the hum of hope filling the air, and a community beginning to believe that compassion, backed by lived experience and action, might just bridge the gap between desperation and dignity. Mac sat at his desk in the bustling main office of the now thriving Second Chance Center, his eyes tracing lines of data on the screen. Job placements, mental health referrals, families reunited. This wasn't the quiet life he'd once craved on the streets, but it was real, meaningful, and packed with purpose. He thought back to that frozen Cincinnati morning when he'd swallowed his pride to ask for $1. A man in fine gloves sat beside him, not to give charity but to listen, and that simple act had ignited a transformation that now rippled across communities. Behind his shoulder, the door opened. Mac looked up to see Bill Clinton step in, brimming with energy and wearing his signature warm smile. Clinton had become an unlikely but powerful advocate for homelessness reform, leveraging decades of public service and friendship with J.D. Vance to shine a national spotlight on the Second Chance Network. He offered a handshake that landed solid and sincere. "Good morning, Mac," Clinton said. "I've got news." J.D. followed from the hallway, closing the door behind him. "Ma'am," he began, addressing President Clinton with deference, "we're scheduled for the governor's roundtable in 10 minutes. Then we tour the women's housing wing." Clinton nodded, turning to Mac. "I've been talking with federal partners. We can scale this model nationwide. But we need one more thing, a unifying message, a face. We'd like you to share your story at the State of the Union address next month." Mac's breath caught. A few years ago, he couldn't imagine a crowd of more than 10. Now, he stood on the brink of addressing millions, representing those still hidden in plain sight. He steadied himself. "If it helps get more people back on their feet, I'll do it." That evening, after rehearsal in the speaker's green room, Mac sat beside J.D. and Clinton, facing a full-length mirror and a small camera. A teleprompter flashed the speech's first lines. "Good evening, my name is Mac Miller. A little over 3 years ago, I was homeless, living in my car, asking strangers for change. I never thought I'd stand here tonight, or represent the voices of thousands who still struggle. It felt surreal, the lights, the makeup, the anticipation. But when he caught the eyes of the former president and J.D., he found his center. This was more than a speech. This was a mission." That night, the Capitol roared with applause as Mac concluded his remarks. Cameras circled him as he exited the chamber. A media maelstrom followed him to his car, then to a small post-speech gathering in the Senate dining room. He spotted faces he recognized. Tara, now a licensed electrician. Bert, whose cafe employed fellow veterans. Mrs. Chun, who owned her own convenience store again. They traveled from Cincinnati, Cleveland, and other Second Chance locations, living proof of the vision he, J.D., and President Clinton had built. Clinton raised a glass. To Mac Miller, the voice of recovery, resilience, and real reform. The room echoed with cheers. In the following weeks, momentum surged. Media outlets followed Second Chance stories coast to coast. Governors asked to replicate the model. J.D., Mac, and Clinton held meetings at HUD, the VA, and NGOs. Mac visited cities still struggling, Los Angeles, New York, Detroit, recalling his days sleeping in alleys, only now offering coffee, empathy, and actionable solutions. One afternoon, he toured a Montana center absorbing the Second Chance blueprint. He walked with a young mother, Kayla, once living in her car with her 2 children. She'd secured a studio, a counseling appointment, and a part-time job in a local diner. Kayla's bright smile reminded Mac of Rita and redoubled his sense of purpose. Back in Cincinnati, the original center stood polished and bustling. Mac emerged onto the rooftop patio, where he found President Clinton gazing at the skyline. "Beautiful," Clinton whispered, arms wrapped around himself from the breeze. "You did this." Mac leaned beside him, the hum of activity below reminding him of everything he'd overcome and achieved. "We did it," he corrected. Clinton smiled, then grew serious. "But something's on my mind. The narrative of homelessness still focuses on tragedy. We need to keep elevating hope stories. People like you. What's the next chapter?" Mac thought about Mrs. Chun, who'd just picked up night school classes in business. Kajla with her kids, the veterans starting small businesses, families regaining stability. But the struggle was far from over. We need to focus on prevention, outreach in schools, early assistance. 1 in every 5 households is one paycheck away from crisis. Clinton nodded. Let's draft a national prevention initiative. A companion to Second Chance. Call it First Choice. Education, family support, rent assistance before things spiral. Mac reached out. Let's do it. 2 years later, the First Choice pilot launched in 10 states. Every mayor who'd been on the fence pledged support. Congress passed initial funding. The message was clear. Help before crisis, not just after. At a Washington, D.C. summit, celebrating the milestone, Mac stepped to the podium one last time that day. He reflected on CJ freshman crowds, on grandmothers and homeless veterans, on unsung mothers who held everything together until they couldn't anymore. He concluded, we're all vulnerable when safety nets fail. But when we connect to listen, to give a second chance, to build 1,000 bridges instead of walls, we don't just save lives, we restore communities. Clinton and JD joined him on stage. The audience rose, applauding not just the program but the man, a former stranger on the street, now a catalyst for change. That evening, JD, Mac, and Clinton dined quietly under a January sky near Capitol Hill. The journey had spanned homelessness, hardship, unlikely friendships, and now national reform. They toasted softly to Second Chance, First Choice, and the promise of many more chapters to come. Clinton raised his glass to unexpected journeys and the power of belief. Mac closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of that freezing sidewalk, that first stranger who sat beside him and offered focus instead of $1. The speech, the programs, the hundreds of lives touched, it all traced back to that simple act of listening. If nothing else, he'd learned this. Real change starts when someone believes we're more than statistics. He smiled and lifted his glass. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and press the like button.